Well, Singlemalt TV has now brought its cameras to Trafalgar Square in the heart of London, teeming with red buses, people and pigeons, thousands of pigeons. We're here to visit the Albannach, a bar restaurant which you can't see because it's behind the bus, but it's a Scottish, stylish, modern Scottish bar restaurant. Opened 2 years ago, not a trace of tartan, although if you look carefully you'll see that the staff wear kilts, but the kilts are actually pinstripe kilts. We are, after all, in the middle of London. But the main reason for going there is to meet Jim Wrigley, the bar manager, who is also an expert mixologist and who has done a lot of work creating new Scotch-based cocktails, but based upon classic cocktails.
There we go. So let's move on to the next idea. That's better. Go on.
Right, where do you take them from there, having opened them up?
We've opened them up. Let's say that we're not talking about necessarily food here, but let's say that we'll put it in the same sort of terms as a meal. So aperitif, or that's your little hors d'oeuvre, amuse-bouche. We're going to move on to more of a starter whiskey cocktail now.
Love it.
Which is great. So we're going to do, this is a Blood and Sand. Now, I've been talking about this before, it's a classic cocktail. When you're working with cocktails, one of the easiest ways to do a drink, much as we've seen with the way I've just ripped off a mojito there, is that you just work with an existing drink and a set of flavours that you know, and then you tinker it slightly. So Blood and Sand, 1920s cocktail. Early cocktail history is full of cognac, gin and whiskey, mainly blended whiskies. You'd see J&B kicking around a lot. You'd see a lot of Chivas Regal in early times, and loads of other blends that were bottled for the export market. So when Americans were drinking their whiskey, as they did in cocktails,
They're Scotch.
They're Scotch. Scotch mixes well in certain drinks. It's very easy to just substitute a single malt into an existing whiskey drink and just tinker with the proportions. The way to make it interesting is to work with the relative flavours that are there and then bring something new.
Find the right malt.
So it's a really simple cocktail. It's a Valentino film from 1922, Blood and Sand, and it was made for the after-show party, basically. A lot of cocktails came out that way, a lot of famous names, and either named after shows or whatever. And this one is a 1-1-1-1 proportion, broken into 4 equal parts. We're actually going to change that slightly because we're changing the base spirit. We want the whiskey to come through. And we're going to work with, as I say, a classic drink in which we're varying the proportions primarily to work with the whiskey. It does illustrate a really interesting point, which I'll come on to in a second. Fresh fruit juice. It was only about 10 years before this that fruit juice first appeared. Apart from citrus juices, so literally just lemon and lime juice is used in sours, people weren't using fruit juice in cocktails. It was, the idea of taking your base spirit, working with it was there, but the idea of throwing fruit juices in it weren't. And then there was a cocktail called the Bronx, which came out in New York.
Called the Bronx?
The Bronx, yes. It's a great cocktail using orange juice. Blood and Sand follows swiftly after and follows the same idea. But because we're working with whiskey, and whiskey it's aristocratic, it's complex, it's difficult, it can be an errant child when it comes to flavours. You have to be careful about the thing. So that is orange juice from concentrate, what people expect when they order a vodka orange juice. We're going to put fresh orange juice in this because it's lighter. It's a little bit more bite to it, and obviously it's fresher and it will work with the fresh flavours in there. So just now, because proportions are all important, I'm not just going to guess, as I usually do if it's busy, that this is the right amount. I will actually measure it out. So. That's one shot of fresh orange juice. If we were doing this for a competition or something, then maybe we'd give you all of the different ingredients to taste separately and then taste the amalgamation. The idea of a cocktail is that it's greater than the sum of its parts. Same as a whiskey, it's more than barley beer that's been put in a kettle. You know, it's much more than that. So we're taking that. We're going to add the other ingredients, but first of all, I'm going to add the whiskey. We're going to work with Talisker. So now we're going on to an island. When I'm trying to describe to customers or staff the regions, there's so many sub-regions involved that it gets quite complicated. And some regions practically have a denomination of their own, because Talisker isn't, I call it an island highland. It doesn't taste anything like Highland Park or Scapa or anything like that.
But it's unique, isn't it? It's got this unique spiciness.
It's great. I mean, the smokiness that's in there isn't reminiscent of Islay. It's not reminiscent of any other island. And then the way that the backbone of it, all of those the kind of rich ripe berry flavours that come through on the finish. You can get them on the nose as well. They're all in there, and you don't really get that with a lot of Islas. You don't really get that with Highland Park or Scapa or other Highland whiskies, and you certainly don't get it anywhere else in the Highland that I can think of in such a combination. It is unique. As a backbone, because it's got a long finish, we've got to make sure that our ingredients are going to stand up to that long finish and work well with the whiskey. I say equal proportions, but we do want the whiskey to come through. So for this, it's going to go slightly over. That was exactly 30.14 mils. 10. Technical 10. So yeah, that's the whiskey in there. Let's put that to one side for the moment. So we've got whiskey and orange juice. Not really much going on at the moment. Next thing we do, this is Hering's cherry liqueur, cherry Hering from Peter Hering. Classic cocktail ingredient, one of the original ingredients, and it would have been cherry Hering as well, not just cherry brandy in most bars. With this one, it's simply, because it's quite sweet, because we're using fresh orange juice, it's not as sweet as concentrate, we're going to slightly overdo it on this.
That's the blood element in Blood and Sand.
This is where our colour's going to come from, and so you've got blood and sand in the colours there. And last but not least, we're going to use a sweet vermouth. I generally tend to favour Noilly Prat Rouge when I'm working with classic cocktails. It depends. Martini Rosso is specifically designed for certain drinks. Italians drink it, and so if you're going to make a Negroni or something like that, then you should really use an Italian vermouth. If you're making something along these bases, I find that this is just a little bit more complex and elegant for working with the flavours, and obviously that's going to work better with something as complex as Talisker. Does have a little bit of a bite to it, a little bit of bitterness. So because we balanced out the sweet already, we're going to drop that down. It'll be slightly less than the cherry Hering. So instead of that sort of equal proportions, we've kept the orange level, we've upped the whiskey and upped the cherry Hering, and we've dropped the sweet vermouth to try and get it all to balance. Now, as a starter, you don't get many better glasses than that, so that's just a simple cocktail glass with martini glasses, that's commonly known.
Block ice this time?
Yeah, absolutely. If you use crushed ice when you're shaking a drink, it over dilutes it. Plus, it's going to turn to shards of shrapnel. We want to agitate it, aerate it, mix the ingredients together, make it cold and dilute it at the same time. And the best way to do that is by controlling the amount of shaking we do. So, it's kind of
That's controlled shaking, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew exactly how many times was in there. Controlled the amount of kinetic energy that, no, really didn't at all. And now the moment of truth, the most important thing is to check the drink to make sure it's going to taste okay. Happy with that. Right. So, you know what Talisker tastes like? We're taking Talisker, we've added all of these different ingredients to it. Whiskey purists are rolling around on the floor crying.
And am I going to join them?
I certainly hope not. I think you should, well, rolling around on the floor maybe later on after a couple of them. But here we go. So we've gone from loads of fresh citrus to something with body, working with a stronger whiskey, and Talisker will pair really well with fish.
It does, yes.
So if you're thinking about having a starter, especially sort of a classic starter, maybe having some form of seafood, shellfish, or something like that, something picky that's going to be light and still retain salt and smoke. from its surroundings. Oysters, if you're going to have, get yourself some lock fine oysters, whack some Talisker by the side, or have a blood and sand with it, it'll work really well. So, please.
You don't garnish this one?
No, I'm going to leave that one ungarnished.
That's fine.
It has been done with an orange twist. I think it's pretty much perfect as it is.
Not a great deal on the nose, perhaps a little bit of tobacco, which suits me. Gosh, you can taste the Talisker. That's the tobacco note. There's a little bit of smoke.
On the finish, I always find the smoke is what's left.
It's again, it's all in balance. You don't get. I mean, I'm not getting any cherry flavors, orange flavors.
Or
just the whiskey's coming through, and
no.
with this wonderful background. It's interesting that from the ingredients, it seems to me as if it might be a bit of a girly drink, but it's got a very sort of masculine flavour.
Yeah.
But I think you'd probably need a whiskey with the weight of Talisker to come through all these other flavours.
If I was making a traditional blood and sand, I'd use a blend like Shivers. Monkey Shoulder's really good, vatted malt, but still, because it's Speyside, it's quite light.
Yeah, it's got a bit of body as well.
Yeah, I mean it's great stuff for working with cocktails. And if you're going to use it traditionally, then I'd probably use the concentrated orange juice, or at least carton fresh orange juice, fresh pressed orange juice, rather than pressing it straight away because it'd be too citrus. And then I'd keep the proportions exactly level because the whiskey's body and sweet, it'll balance. Yeah. You'll end up with a completely different drink. With this one, I still hold that the best thing about this one is the fact that smoke is on the finish. And that's probably my favourite thing about it, is it balances well. It's a great drink. It's a great version of that drink. But Talisker's still there moments afterwards.
Very interesting. And are we on to the main course now?
Oh, we are, indeed, yes. So the main course, this is where it gets fun.